All right, paragraph 5B of the 1 to 4 family contract. This is the termination option. Okay. So for nominal consideration, the receipt of which seller acknowledges and buyer's agreement to pay the option fee within the time required, seller grants buyer the unrestricted right to terminate this contract by giving notice of termination to the seller within negotiated number of days after the effective date of this contract, which is called the option period. So let's pause here. In the state of Texas, Texas is an as-is state. That means that when the buyer writes a contract to purchase that property, they're buying it as is. There is no automatic inspection period. In other states, it's written into the law that the buyer has the ability to conduct their due diligence. Texas does not have that law. Texas is as is. Because Texas is as is, they have put into the contract a termination option. So if the buyer would like to do their due diligence and do inspections, and do the inspections and want to terminate, they can only do that if they purchase a termination option. Some common termination option fees are $10 per day, sometimes $25 a day, depending on the price point and the circumstances. It is negotiable. Okay. Now, what this means during this time, the buyer is going to do their due diligence. This is when they order their inspections, their general inspection. I always want them to do also an AC inspection, right? And any other inspections they want to do. 10 days should be plenty of time. You want to get the inspector out there right away. So right when we go under contract, the buyer goes through their list of inspectors and they choose an inspector and get them out there within the next day or two. Even if we have 10 days, I want them out there day 1 or 2 so that we have time to review. We can see if we need to get other inspectors out there, AC, roof, electrical, a plumber, whatever we need, and get them out there so that the buyer has the opportunity to know what they're getting into, and it gives us time to negotiate. Okay? Because let's look at this. If we put 10 days after the effective date of the contract, notices to terminate. Notices under this paragraph must be given by 5 p.m. by the date specified. If buyer gives notice of termination within the time prescribed, 1, the option fee will not be refunded and the escrow agent shall release any option fee remaining with escrow agent to the seller, and 2, any earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. So remember up here, if we're doing $3,000 of earnest money and $1,000 of option money, if during that option period the buyer finds something that they don't like, whether condition of the property or anything else for any reason, they can terminate. In this case, they would not get back the $100, but they would get back the $3,000 in earnest money in this example, whatever the earnest money is they put up. Again, remember, Texas is an as-is state. That's why we have the option fee. Now, notices need to be given by 5 p.m. on the final day. And notice here, time is of the essence for this paragraph. So what that means is if we go back over here and look at our calendar, let's say we have a 10-day option period and we went under contract, let's say the 15th. 15th would be day 0. That means our option period would begin today, and this would be 16th would be day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Day 10 would fall on the 25th of December. That's Christmas Day. It doesn't matter that it's Christmas Day. That is when the option period will end. So notice to terminate would have to be given by 5 p.m. on the 25th of December, according to the contract. Make sure you understand, as far as giving notice of termination, the day doesn't matter. It could be Christmas Day, it could be New Year's Day, it could be Thanksgiving Day, could be a Saturday, could be a Sunday. Doesn't matter. That 5 o'clock time is of the essence for giving that notification. For that reason, we want to make sure, again, inspections are done in a timely manner. We have time to negotiate, to further inspect, and to get agreement from the seller for any repairs or price reductions or additional seller concessions, or nothing. The house could be perfect and there might not be an issue. But just understand, time is of the essence when it comes to this. It's not midnight. Some people think they have until midnight on the last day. It's not, it's 5 p.m., right? Make sure you understand that. Make sure your buyer understands that because notice has to go out. A lot of times what happens is we as agents don't push our buyers to get inspections done. And then they're busy, so we don't talk. And we end up the last day of the option period trying to negotiate repairs at 2 p.m. The seller needs time to review the repair request and make a decision if they want to make those repairs or not. The seller is not obligated to make repairs on their house. They can say no. And if the buyer doesn't like that, the buyer then, if they're in their option period, will have the right to terminate. When you terminate, you have to do a termination of contract and a release of earnest money. Okay, get with me or your broker at that point if you need to do that. But those have to be signed and turned in. The termination has to be turned in before 5 o'clock to the other party. Can't emphasize that enough. Okay. Now, two other things in this paragraph, paragraph C, right? Timely deliver of earnest money. If the buyer fails to deliver the earnest money within the time required, the seller may terminate this contract. So if the buyer does not turn in the earnest money, but within the 3 days, according to this paragraph, the seller can terminate this contract. Make sure your buyer understands that. Buyers sometimes think they have time and they can turn it in 5 or 6 days later. If they do that, the seller could terminate the contract. Seller might not terminate it, but they definitely have that ability. They might get a better offer that comes in. And if they don't have earnest money by the end of that day, on that third day, then they can terminate this contract. Okay. Right. Or paragraph 15, the buyer would be in breach of contract at that time and they could sue them as well. Okay. Now notice it says by providing notice to buyer before buyer delivers earnest money. So could the buyer deliver that earnest money on day 4 or 5? They could, and then you would still have a valid contract. You would not have an option period, though, if the option fee was not delivered in time. Keep that in mind. Okay. Now let's look here. Failure to timely deliver option fee. If no dollar amount is stated as the option fee, what does that tell us? If no dollar amount is stated as option fee, that means the buyer has to pay for the option fee. The buyer and the seller cannot agree for $0 for the option fee. That doesn't work. It has to be at least $1. I say put at least $10. If no dollar amount is stated as the option fee, or if buyer fails to deliver option fee within the time required, which is the 3 days up here, buyer shall not have the unrestricted right to terminate the contract under paragraph 5. So time is of the essence. If day 3 comes and they don't deliver the option fee, the buyer will not have an option period. Keep that in mind. And also remember the buyer has to pay an option fee. If they don't pay an option fee, they don't have an option period, even if the seller agrees. This also is important if you're extending the option period. And it's the seller's fault that we have to extend the option period because the seller didn't have utilities on. The buyer still has to pay for an extension. And my suggestion is if we're going to extend it 3 days, still put $10 there at least. Don't just put $1, put at least $10. Okay, you have to pay for the extension, even if it's the seller's fault on the option fee. Okay, and time is of the essence in this paragraph. We've talked about that. Super important paragraph. Hope this helps.